Our theme of our convention this year is Ministry on the Margins, and I thought it might be kind of fun to start off today by hearing some greetings to us recorded from people around this country and around this world who are working with people on the margins. We're supporting all of the people that you are going to hear from via video in just a second. We sometimes think, what impact does our giving to the church have beyond our own borders? Well, you're going to see that in just a minute. So let's begin with these greetings from around the world to our diocese as we begin our meeting today.
My name is Andrew Gardner, and I'm the volunteer team leader here at Joseph's Pantry at Grace St. Paul's in Tucson, where we work to make sure that all of our neighbors have enough to eat. We hope that your time at convention will be fruitful, and thank you very much for your support.
Greetings and salutations from Fort Carson, Colorado, the base of the Cheyenne Mountain here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Chaplain Jim Brisson sending greetings and salutations to Bishop Smith and all the conferees attenders this year for the Diocesan Convention. This year we'll be preparing to minister over to 10,000 soldiers who are preparing to deploy, and their families will remain here at Fort Carson, and we will have the opportunity to bring light and love into their lives. Have a great time at the conference. Looking forward to seeing you all again soon. God bless you. Have a great day.
Saludos. Mi nombre es Deborah Tinajero y soy párroca de la iglesia Grace St. Paul's Episcopal Church en Tucson, Arizona. Trabajo en las oficinas de servicios sociales, ayudando a gente sin recursos que viven en las calles de Tucson. Les mando saludos a todos ustedes que participan en la convención del Diócesis de Arizona.
Hi, I'm Abigail Nelson. I'm the Senior Vice President for Programs at Episcopal Relief and Development. We're the Episcopal Church's response to human need around the world. We connect the donations and prayers and actions and cares of people here in the Episcopal Church to the needs of those in other places in response to disaster and in support of their health and economic needs. Today, I want to send you greetings. I want to say hello to all of you in the Diocese of Arizona as you gather for your convention. Thank you so much for the support that you bring through us to others. Be well and God bless as you deliberate in your convention.
Hi, I'm Donna. This is my friend Felipe and Jim, and this is Larry. We're from Bridging Furniture Bank, and we want to say hi to the Episcopal Convention. Hi!
Hello, I am Padre Marvin Juarez, the President Church of the San Felipe and San Antonio. We are located in Rio Dulce, northeast of Guatemala. Today I am sending greeting to dioceses of Arizona as they meet together at their annual convention. Thanks for your support and God blessing you.
Hello, my name is Daphne Bonca, the social media reporter at Maison de Naissance. I'm in Quebec, Haiti. Today I send greetings to the people of the Diocese of Arizona as they meet at their convention. God bless you.
Hi, I'm Steve Maddox, coordinator of the Sanctuary Ministry at Grace St. Paul's in Tucson. Today I send greetings to the people of the Diocese of Arizona as they meet at Diocesan Convention. God bless you.
I am Obdulio Pineda, Director San Matthew, located in Morales, Izabal, Guatemala. Today I send greeting to the people of the Diocese of Arizona as they meet together at their annual convention. God bless you.
Hello, my name is Juma, and I'm volunteer coordinator at Steve Teacher Academy, Bagamoyo, Tanzania. And today, I would like to send my greetings to the people of Diocese of Arizona as they meet for the Diocesan Convention. May God bless you all.
Hello, my name is Jesse Villegas, and I'm the Canon for Youth and Young Adult Ministries for the Episcopal Diocese of Arizona. Along with our wonderful ministry partners in this country and in around the world, I would also like to bring a highlight to the youth activity here in our own diocese. Tomorrow, we will make the effort to gather here at Convention, so you will see us in and around. Please stop a young person, say hello, for we are trying to make habit of gathering at Convention every year. God bless. We'll see you tomorrow.
Let's have a hand for those folks that have sent us blessings. I think that most of you know that before I became your bishop, I served a parish in downtown Los Angeles. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to meet a man who became an inspiration to me in my own ministry. His name is Father Gregory Boyle, and he's a Jesuit priest whose congregation was located not far from mine. Father Boyle made an interesting choice when he got out of seminary. Instead of taking a position in a comfortable suburban parish, he asked his bishop if he might work among the gang members of the barrio. His bishop thought he was nuts, and besides, it was far too dangerous. But as they say, he persisted. He took over Dolores Mission, a struggling parish in one of the city's most dangerous neighborhoods, and he worked hard for several years to gain the trust of the young men in the area. In the first 3 years that he was there, he presided over the funerals of 600 young men who were killed by gang violence. He decided that the biggest problem that he needed to address was the loss of hope. Gang members had no hope for any kind of a better life. So Father Boyle got out of the pulpit and got into business. He started a company called Homeboy Industries, which opened a bakery, then a restaurant, and eventually started several other small companies which created jobs for the young people in his community. Over the years that he has been there, Homeboy Industries has employed almost 10,000 young people in the area, giving them a steady job and hope for education and a future. He tells his story in an award-winning book called Tattoos on the Heart, which is one of the most moving accounts of ministry that I've ever read. Father Boyle is one of those saints among us who recognizes that the church does its best job of following Jesus when it follows him into those places where there is hopelessness, poverty, and despair, when it ministers to those who are on the margins. I remember he once said to me, "Where do you think Jesus would be if he came back today?" I doubt he'd be sitting in a pew in some church on Sunday morning. Instead, he would be at places like the bus station, the ER, the county jail, the detox clinic. And if that's where Jesus would be, then we have no choice but to be there too. The church is not only the truest to its calling when it is operating on the margins of society, but it's also most likely to grow there. When we look at church history, we find that the greatest growth happened in the church when it ministered to those on the margins, beginning at first when it left its Jewish roots to engage the Gentile communities in the ancient world. And for those of us who trace our ancestors to the British Isles, we can be lucky that people like Pope Gregory the Great was wise enough to send missionaries to the Anglo-Saxons, who were such a scary bunch of Viking-like characters that St. Augustine of Canterbury turned back at least once, rather than take on a group of pagans who had long beards and horned helmets. In the 19th century, much of the world in turn was Christianized by Anglican missionaries who brought the faith to Africa, India, and the Far East. Here in Arizona, we can be thankful for men like Endicott Peabody, who in 1882 wandered into Tombstone, Arizona, a Hell Dorado full of some of the most violent outlaws and outcasts of his day. Come to think of it, no matter what your ethnic background, all of us are here today because of the efforts of courageous men and women who preached the gospel to our forebears, some of which were groups of people living on the margins of their society, and preached that gospel under sometimes almost impossible conditions. Today, we may not have the geographic mission fields as of old, but we have plenty of places where we as the church are called to be ministers to those on the margins. Another way of putting this would be to ask ourselves, what groups of people around us really don't have a place at our table? Or who are the people that we regard as having nothing really to say to us? Jesus ministered to many such groups, and that list you will see reflected in our breakout sessions for today. In Jesus' day, lepers, women, children, the mentally ill, those who were regarded as unclean and excluded because of their race or religion. In Arizona, for instance, there are at least 4 such groups of people that I would put on my list. The first is youth, and I'm not talking just about how we all wish that we had more young people in our buildings. I'm talking about that vast majority of American young people who have never even heard of Jesus Christ, let alone the Episcopal Church. The second group is the working poor. This is a cultural divide that we especially need to be sensitive to. Episcopalians are the highest educated and wealthiest denomination in our country, which means that we are often out of touch with the needs of those struggling to make ends meet or have to work on Sunday morning. Next time you're in a shopping mall, sit down for a while and look at the people passing you by and ask yourself, would the people that I see in this place feel welcome in my church? The third group is our Hispanic brothers and sisters. Arizona will be 50% Hispanic in the next few years. And even though our fastest growing congregations are Latino, we still have a long way to go in reaching this demographic. Oh, and by the way, the record for the most confirmations last year goes to St. Andrew's, Glendale, with 56 young people confirmed, almost all of whom of Spanish speaking. The last group is Native peoples. Arizona has more First Nation people than any other state. Unfortunately, few of them are in our churches, or in any church for that matter. And yet they are an invaluable resource in teaching us that we cannot survive without a deep reverence for creation and the support of a close-knit community. This past week, as I mentioned before, I was at the House of Bishops meeting in Alaska, a diocese which is about 50% Native peoples. Visiting remote villages in some of the harshest conditions that humans have to face, I was again reminded of the necessity of community for survival, both spiritual and physical. In American culture, which prides itself on rugged individualism and which rewards selfishness and greed, the necessity of community is a lesson that we have to learn over and over again. All of these groups and others need to feel that they are part of our Episcopal family. They are around us, but not fully included, not fully at the table. For us to be the church, they have to be the church too. We say that we believe in the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. And as you all know, the word Catholic means fully inclusive, all people, everywhere. So we really can't claim to be Catholic as long as there are empty seats around our table. The problem is that becoming truly inclusive is really scary. It takes a lot of effort to leave our comfort zones and to actively invite someone different from us into fellowship. This kind of integration is especially rough for us because, according to the Pew Research Group, we are the 5th most segregated religious denomination in the country, along with being the richest and best educated. We are at the top of the privileged ladder, and that makes it especially hard to hear different voices. It's hard for clergy too. In a discussion with some clergy the other day, someone pointed out that although all of our churches may have members who are struggling to make ends meet or who are living on Social Security, few of us knew any people so poor that they don't know where their next meal was coming from or where they were going to sleep that night. In the church, we're pretty good at having meetings about how to solve the social problems of our day. And the House of Bishops, by the way, is not immune to this temptation. And often those meetings don't even include the people that we're talking about. Being with those who live on the margins, as opposed to just talking about them, makes us profoundly uncomfortable. One of my favorite parables is about Jesus having lunch at Denny's. The ministerial association of the local town walked into a Denny's one day and noticed that Jesus was there with a bunch of people they didn't recognize. Jesus was sitting off in the corner, and around him were a group of strange characters. There was a sanitation worker with smelly overalls, a well-painted streetwalker, an undocumented worker, a crack addict, and a vet in a wheelchair. And when the ministerial association walked in, Jesus gestured to them and said, "Friends, come join us. There's plenty of room at the table." At which point, the members of the clergy association looked at each other and said, "No thanks, we'll sit over here." But even when we want to be of help, it's not easy to do so. We revert to the comfortable position of either writing a check or lecturing people on how they ought to live their lives, or in short, to be more like us. But Jesus did none of these things. Rather, he simply hung out with those who needed to hear his message of hope. The thing that scandalized Jesus' contemporaries more than anything else was not what he said, but whom he associated with. He didn't lecture those living on the margins. He loved them. Pema Chodron, an ordained Buddhist nun, writes of compassion and suggests that its truest measure lies not in our service of those on the margins, but in our willingness to see ourselves in kinship with them. It's all about relationship. It's all about partnership. It's all about learning from one another. I learned that lesson early when I was a brand new bishop, and I went to a meeting with African bishops. It was held in Spain before the Lambeth Conference. And I asked one of the African bishops, I said, "What could we in the States do that would be most helpful to you?" And he said, "Come and visit us." And I said, "Well, wait a minute, you just told me about this hospital you're trying to get set up and how much money you need for it." And You know, quite frankly, for me to come and visit you in Africa and to bring people with me, that's going to cost thousands of dollars. Wouldn't you rather have the money? And he was scandalized. And he said, oh, no. He said, God made people before God made money. It's all about relationship. The good news today is that many of our congregations are already moving in this direction of partnership and community building. I took a look at the list of projects that some of you are doing with your mission rebate shares, and it brought tears to my eyes. Here are just a few examples. One parish has expanded their partnership with a local food bank to now include a literary project for children. And to date, they have collected and distributed 15,000 books. Another parish continues to house a children's clinic, which provides for the health needs of those living on the border. Several of your congregations have partnerships with your local public schools, providing manpower for tutoring and supplies for low-income students. And many of you are working with local food banks in partnership to feed the hungry in your midst. One of you even collects and distributes food for dogs and cats. And the list goes on and on. You saw even more examples of that this morning in the video that we began with. So if your church has not already done so, I urge you to follow Christ into those marginal areas that might be closest to you, and that you do so in a way that respects the integrity and the wisdom of those you partner with. Believe it or not, they have much to teach you. Father Boyle cautions us that true compassion consists in standing of awe of what the poor have to carry, rather than judging them for how they carry it. This, for us, will be a profoundly difficult task because it asks us to listen to people that we find hard to understand or to relate to. But as Rowan Williams once said, following Jesus is all about being uncomfortable. But we don't have to face this mission alone. We have people around us like Father Boyle who can guide us and inspire us, who have crossed over those margins and can report back to us that it is far more exciting and rewarding on the other side than we can imagine. And they invite us to join them on the way. We have one such person with us today, a person who is a true priest and prophet. Her name is Rebecca Stevens, and many of you already know of her important work. Here's what the internet has to say about her by way of introduction. Becca Stevens is an author, speaker, priest, social entrepreneur, founder and president of Thistle Farms. After experiencing the death of her father and subsequent child abuse when she was 5, Becca longed to open a sanctuary for survivors, offering a loving community. In 1997, 5 women who had experienced trafficking, violence, and addiction were welcomed home. 20 years later, the organization continues to welcome women with free residences that provide housing, medical care, therapy, and education. Residents and graduates earn income through one of 4 social enterprises. The global market of the Thistle Farms helps employ more than 1,800 women worldwide, and the national network has more than 40 sister communities. Becca has been featured in the New York Times, on ABC World News and NPR, and was recently named a 2016 CNN Hero and a White House Champion of Change. She was featured in the PBS documentary, A Path Appears, named Humanitarian of the Year by the Small Business Council of America, and inducted into the Tennessee Women's Hall of Fame. Becca attended the University of the South and Vanderbilt Divinity School, and she's been conferred with 2 honorary doctorates. Her newest book, Love Heals, will be published by HarperCollins in this month, and maybe it's already out. And Becca lives in Nashville with her husband and Grammy Award winner songwriter Marcus Humman and their 3 sons. So would you now join me in welcoming a modern-day prophet, one who can show us the way to do ministry on the margins by following the way of the cross, Becca Stevens.
That was beautiful. And y'all, thank you so much for having us. 100 degrees here is not the same as it is in Tennessee. So this is breezy and balmy, cool weather for us. We are so happy. And I'm joined today by one of the original thistle farmers, a woman who came into the community right when we opened in 1997. And she chairs the National Outreach Committee. And she's at the table outside, Regina Mullins. And you'll hear from her if you're part of the workshops. And also Tiffany, who has just graduated our 2-year residential program where women come and stay for 2 years free with no authority in the house and learn to love each other in community. And also Susan, who has organized this beautiful journey for us, and we are grateful. When you talked about, Bishop, that beautiful image of doing ministry on the margins, I immediately thought about this prayer book. This prayer book was my dad's. And my dad was an Episcopal priest who moved to Nashville, Tennessee, 1968. My mom, 35 years old, 5 children. And my dad was the Episcopal priest who said, the end of the church would be if women were ever allowed to be acolytes. And the year we moved there, he was killed by a drunk driver. My mom was left widowed with 5 kids, and like so many other folks that you were talking about in your beautiful idea about who's left in the margins. One tragedy sometimes begets another, and the guy that came in who took over until a new priest was assigned, he was the senior warden in the church, began to sexually abuse me, beginning in the fellowship hall, and it went on for years. And I was lost. I was really pretty lost. And it took a lot of communities and forgiveness and mercy for me to kind of find my way in this world. When I got ordained into the Episcopal Church, my mom gave me my dad's 1928 prayer book. I had never heard a sermon he wrote. I'd only heard little stories here and there by my mom. And when she gave me the prayer book, what I noticed was that all the services that he led as a priest in public, the communion and baptism and marriages and burials, they were perfectly intact. But the daily offices were held together, the margins, by Scotch tape. That he must have gotten up every day of his priesthood and said his prayers. It's all I needed to know about him, those margins. Those margins that are the heart of ministry, those margins that remind us of what we do in our daily lives become the center of our lives and what we are about. When I started Thistle Farms in Magdalene, I promise you I needed that community as much as the women needed that community. I needed to believe that love heals, and on the margins we can find our way into the center of what love is and how love heals. We started off with the mission statement, we want to be a witness to the truth that in the end, love is the most powerful force for change that we know. And it was crazy because it was 5 women. I don't think anybody had less than 100 arrests on their record. All the women were victims before, they were criminals for sure. On average, the women for the last 20 years we've served are first raped between the ages of 7 and 11 and first hit the streets between 14 and 16 years old. And it did seem like there was not even a great way to do ministry, a whole community coming together to help 5 women. And when I look back on it, what I realized is 5 pioneer women have helped change the conversation, legislation, and economic realities and debunking myths around prostitution and trafficking in the whole United States of America. It's been an amazing journey. It gives us a lens to see the gospel. It's a way to participate in that beautiful ministry that's always on the margins in the gospel. So that's how we started. We started off small, we got big, we've gotten strong. We're the largest social enterprise run by survivors in the U.S. We're in every single Whole Foods store in the country. And if you ever want to clap for something, you have no idea how much effort that took. I'm not going to ask y'all to clap throughout, but when I hit like a really good point that you agree with, if you just just let me know we're together as we're going through this talk. That would be very, very good for me. We'll practice once. Isn't that nice? It's not too much for Episcopalians, but it's not as stiff as those Presbyterians, for sure, for sure, for sure. In all that success and all that work we've done, about 80%, a little bit more than 80% of the women who come into the Thistle Farms community graduate the 2-year program later, are clean and sober, have their own car, have made restitutions with the courts. But you know the truth that in the ministry on the margins, there's a lot of sadness and heartbreaks in those stories too. It means that a little bit less than 20% of the women haven't made it. And we've buried women who haven't made it. We've gone to jail to revisit women who haven't made it. Many of the women in our community relapse over relationships before anything else. They go back to places that are abusive. They go back to a sense of hopelessness that you're talking about, Bishop. And I remember, just several years into doing this work, I met a woman named Peggy Sue, and Peggy Sue was a young woman like many of the women that we serve. Her trauma started really early. It was really intense. And when I met her, she was on a feeding tube in a county hospital, chained to the bed. And she wanted to come to our community. And we sat and we talked for days and days, and she ended up dying, and what looked like to me like the whole world had landed on her 80-pound frame. That those universal issues of sexual assault, the abuse that we know that happens, the realities of racism and the violence of poverty, all of that landing on her back. And it broke. And no one claimed her body. And the state gave us her ashes in a cardboard box. And I can tell you as a priest, you know this, there's some things we do with a lot of ease and grace, and some things we do with a lot of trepidation. I don't ever remember being as nervous as I was for that funeral. There was just nothing. It didn't seem like there was anything in the story I could talk about. We weren't adequate enough. The systems weren't adequate enough. The injustices are so old and ingrained in this world. There weren't even mourners. So 5 or 6 of us gathered around. We had our ashes, and we stood in a room together. And I said, you just say, the Lord be with you. You say a prayer. You sing a song, and we'll close. Let's just be done with it. And we started with the Lord be with you, and no one could speak. We couldn't speak because everybody was weeping, because love was so thick in the room. When you talk about going to the prisons to meet Jesus, or you go to the Denny's to meet Jesus, when there is nothing, and watching love and God fill that space, it's all you hope for in this world, that love does have the last word. That love can teach us both through the successes of our ministry in the margin, and it can teach us so much in our failures. That all those things we fear, that we aren't adequate enough, that people will judge us for what we're doing no matter what it is. We're too Christian, or we're not Christian enough. The fact that What do we think we're doing when going over here, or why aren't we going over here? We don't know everything we think we should know to be helpful sometimes. All of those things, and when it's all washed away with love that powerfully. It was amazing. And I remember at that funeral thinking, I will do this work for the rest of my life, thank God. That ministry on the margins does take all our life, and I will do it gratefully. To know that this is the worst the world has to offer. Systems of oppression and injustice. Systems of brokenness, and still love cuts through all that. That I get to stand here and feel that for just a minute. To know that if ever there was a chariot coming in this world, it came for Peggy Sue. That there was never anyone that needed to be in the bosom of Abraham faster. That's what we get to know when we get on those margins. When we thin out our pages and practice every day this laws of love that are 9/10 about what we do. It is so little about what we say. We can't get scared to engage on the margins. We can't be scared of judgment. We can't be scared of our inadequacies or our impact. That really is not margins. That's called sidelining. And there's a big difference. So, 2 weeks ago on Facebook, I saw a picture of Ebony, the woman in the hat. And she's standing on the beach, and her hair's blowing in the wind, and she has this beautiful man beside her, and she has a ring on her finger holding it up, and she says, "Best day ever." I said yes. I met Ebony when she was a little girl, and her mom, who was on the other side of her, Katrina, came into the program early on in the days, and she came in beaten and broke with the same trauma that we've talked about from women on the streets. We didn't have anybody that was selling products at that point for Thistle Farms. We were very, very small, and we were just begging people, and I'll beg you too. I'm not above, I haven't changed that much, sadly, to sell products. And we said, will you come and sell products? You be the national sales director for all 4 stores. And Katrina said, and I'm not cussing, I'm quoting a cusser. She said, "Oh, hell no. I don't want to do that." And we said, "Okay, we hear that as a yes." And she became the national sales director. And at the beginning, we always ask women, what is your hope? What is your hope? When women come in, we can make the financial stuff work. We can make the mental health stuff work, the teeth stuff, the education, the restitution. We can make it all work. But what is the hope? What's the goal? And we'll all work towards it. And Ebony happened to be with her mom when we asked Katrina that question, and she said, "Draw a house, Mama. Tell them we want a house." So Katrina goes on. She's the national sales director. She and Ebony a home. She gets married 10 years into the marriage. They adopt another child. Ebony goes on to college. Ebony graduates from college. There's a huge number of stores now. There's a beautiful sales team of survivors. And Katrina says, "I need to hire somebody that's really just going to deal with this Whole Food stores and get us in there." And she goes out and hires Ebony, and Ebony comes home. And Ebony then gets called by the national director of Whole Foods and says, "Ebony, we want you to come out and speak to the entire staff of Whole Foods, and maybe we can get you in all the stores." This is in March about a year ago. And Ebony had been there like 6 months, and she said to her mom and I, "Oh, hell no." And her mama says, "Great, I hear that as a yes." And she goes out there and she stands before the entire group of salespeople at Whole Foods and says, "Guess what? We dreamed of a house and a community came around us. Lives were saved. Women's lives were touched. Because people buy candles, women can come to work. They become economically independent. They don't have to go back to the same streets and the same old relationships. I'm proof of it. And I'm committed to helping another 1,000 women come off the streets. And the Whole Foods folks were crying. They opened it all up. We go on, make a lot of money selling to them. And then we have to build a new warehouse this summer. So Ebony cost us something like $2 million. Like all children do. And when I saw that post a couple weeks ago on Facebook, I thought, how many people for how many years had to say yes so she could say yes? And that's what Margins Ministry looks like. It's saying yes and yes and yes to all those callings and all those beautiful ministries you do for years and years and years. And someday somebody is free enough to say yes. That's the beauty of this work. So we've grown. We want to be in Arizona. We have 40 sister communities. I was just with your beautiful Deacon Gay last night, 50 women sitting just down the road in prison wanting to know, when are y'all opening a home? That was the question. Am I lying or telling the truth? I'm telling the truth when we talked. When are we opening a home? When can we have more women finding this freedom and this beauty and this grace that we all know is so lavish in this world? And the communities keep growing. They're around the world. Our latest endeavor has been with the women in Greece. It is a group effort. All the Syrian refugees who have come across in boats, who have survived that genocide, and we're trying to now make that link between refugees and human trafficking. That is a very, very important link to make. More than 12,000 children are missing from refugee camps. Less than 1% of refugees ever get to relocate. The average length of stay in a refugee camp is something like 17 years. So women stay and raise children there, and it is a lot. So we went over there, and we have started a new project, and I want to show you a really quick clip of what it is we're doing there.
Give me your tide, your pour, your humble masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these homeless tempest-tossed to me. Give me your tide, your pour, your humble masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these homeless tempest-tossed to me. I will let my lamp be beside the golden door.
So all of that to say to all of us is like we can have an amazing ministry on the margins. That when we hear of great, huge issues like refugee crisis and human trafficking, we don't have to be overwhelmed. We can take small acts and small ways of being and do it together and have a beautiful impact. And you hear the same thing wherever we go and start communities for women survivors. When you gather women and you start saying, we want to have an impact in the marketplace. We want to have people saying stuff from the pulpit. We want to have an impact in legislation. Women coming together start sharing the story of hope, and they say, we want our children to be safe. We want to help heal our communities. We want to have the ability to make choices in our lives and for our families' lives. It's the same everywhere. And the truth is, when you rape a woman, you kill a village. And when you heal a woman, you heal the village. So what I was thinking on the ministry on the margins for the Diocese of Arizona today, that all we have to do is use this time when we're all together and we have all this energy to re-inspire ourselves to do this work for each of us. We all have such great ministries we are already doing, to feel that and to be re-inspired by that work. To think big, think about the global issues that are affecting us. Those overwhelming global injustices, and start again with small acts. For all of us as church members to keep helping ourselves and others to put our money where our faith is. I can't tell you how exhausting it is to talk about this work and see people really supporting it on social media and then buying their soap somewhere else. Do you know what I mean? It's like, okay, then buy your soap from us. It's good soap. Soap is not complicated. When you do this work and when we get inspired and be this way, we don't have to buy into the myths we read in the news or see in the papers anywhere. Women recover. Communities heal. We do have something to say and have a powerful voice. All those things that tell you otherwise are untrue. Always, as we do the work on the margin, the only thing to feel is gratitude. All of us are here because someone has shown us mercy. Someone has given to us. Someone fed us and clothed us. We can never forget that. We are still beggars, and we are grateful for what we receive. Any church without beggars is a museum. Let love lead us on this work and not fear. So we're in it for the long haul. We get to stay grounded. We get to be committed to this community that we have together. And I want to end with just a brief gratitude towards Ty, who is our candle maker. Those candles that I was saying that are in every Whole Food store that we light every day at Thistle Farms, to say we light this for the next woman coming in off the streets, for the more than 100 women on the waiting list, for all the women I met last night sitting in the prison down the road. We keep lighting that candle. Ty was abused early on, ran away from home, was trafficked, began to sell drugs as well as her body for a drug dealer. Shortly after her 18th birthday, she was part of a sting. She was sent for decades to prison. She came out. There was one final charge, but she came out and came to Thistle Farms in Magdalene. She was going to the Rape and Sexual Abuse Center. She was making money. She got a car. That one charge came up. We went to court to testify to say, look, we don't take any federal or state money. The whole community is safer with her at work doing this counseling and commitment to community. And she's safer, and it's free for the state. We've saved y'all $150,000 already. And the person that was prosecuting her said, as I said all that on the stand, said, I hate to quote scripture to a priest, but Caesar gets his due. And I wanted to say, don't worry, you didn't quote scripture to a priest. And you damn well better hope that Caesar doesn't get his due. I hope he doesn't get his due. And they went on and sentenced her to 14 more years. So she left our candle making operation where she was making several thousand candles a week. She went into prison and she sat there for 3.5 years. Every day we lit a candle for her. We kept praying for her. We kept doing the work. With advocacy, good behavior, all of that, she came out in about 3.5 years, and she walked in to Thistle Farms, and she walked into the back of our manufacturing facility, and she started pouring candles again. Imagine that for a minute. 3.5 years you sat down in a room and waited. And I walked back there and I said, how are you doing it? How are you not so mad? How have you not given up on all of us in this whole world for all you've been through your whole life? And she said it was the first time she ever went to prison with a community with her. That she always knew there was money on her commissary card, that people came to visit and people wrote. And she knew she had a job and a bed when she got out. And that she was still grateful. I'm like, Ty, I want to grow up like you and be that forgiving and that compassionate and never tire of this work. Thank you all so much for letting us be a part of your journey. You are a part of our story now, and we are a part of yours, and we will keep figuring out new ways to love this world on the margins so that we can stay in the heart of the gospel. Thank you.